What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And today we want to talk about everybody's favorite quarterback prospect, and I say that because he is so polarizing. Shedeur Sanders, the Colorado quarterback prospect, the son of Deion Sanders. Well, general manager of the New York Giants, Joe Schoen, spoke about him recently while down in Alabama for the Senior Bowl. So we want to talk about that, kind of react to what Joe Schoen had to say about the potential QB1/QB2 of this upcoming draft. Also talk about how we feel about Shedeur Sanders, kind of compare and contrast our feelings to that of Joe Schoen's, and just discuss how the Giants have done so much extensive research on Joe Schoen, or on Shedeur Sanders rather. But meanwhile, Schoen's saying everything is still on the table at number 3 overall, which, of course, that's how it should be. We're only in January, almost February, but we've got until April for the NFL draft. We've got free agency to get through before that. Obviously, everything should be on the table, so we'll go ahead and react to that and just have a conversation today about the Giants' reported and seemingly obvious interest in potentially drafting Shedeur Sanders at number 3 overall. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? How are you feeling? The Senior Bowl has been really interesting. I know, obviously, you've had a fun time looking at Xavier Restrepo at the Senior Bowl, looking at LeJontay Wester at the Shrine Bowl. All your guys are balling out, so credit to you for identifying all of these slot wide receivers that you love so much, like Malachi Corley last year. But how are you feeling, seeing all these cool highlights from the Senior and Shrine Bowls, and what were your thoughts on Joe Schoen's comments about Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of guys having some good practices. Senior Bowl, obviously the Shrine Bowl was really, really impressive for some of the Colorado receivers. And obviously guys like Will Shepard, LeJontay Wester, really showing out. Obviously Horn had a really solid couple days as well. So those guys are ballers, man. They've got speed, they've got size. Wester's I know a lot of people say he's a little undersized, but he's a slot receiver. Every slot receiver, for the most part, is a bit undersized. So I don't really get that narrative. But regardless, Giants kind of looking at the Senior Bowl, and they always do, dating back to Dave Gettleman's days. They draft Senior Bowl guys. Tyrone Tracy last year is the one that pops into my mind immediately as someone that they loved. So I don't think it'll be any different this year either, Anthony. They like a little bit older players because of that experience factor. They want guys that can step in and play immediately. They don't want a lot of raw talent. And that kind of lends itself to why they may not be as interested in a guy like Jackson Dart, who has a ton of experience, but he's only 21. So he doesn't have the experience that maybe Sanders has or Cam Ward has, but still plenty of it. He's still started for multiple seasons and tossed a lot of freaking passes. So he's a little bit younger, but a little bit underdeveloped in some ways. So they may opt for that quarterback in the 3rd round because of that reason, even though you guys know I like Dart a lot. And I think he has a lot of traits that, if developed correctly, could be extremely effective in the NFL. But there's jobs in the balance, guys. Jobs hang in the balance. And Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are not going to put their chips in on a developmental quarterback who needs a lot of work. And guys, Dart needs a lot of work. I like him, but he needs to work on a lot of stuff. I don't think they're going to put all their chips in on a player like this because they need immediate results. They need consistency now. They need someone who's going to flash that upside that saves their jobs. And that's kind of how I look at this draft class is Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have 1 year, 1 draft class, 1 quarterback. Of course, they have a bridge as well in that equation, but they really have one more chance to prove to John Mara that this team is trending in a better direction. He wants to feel better about this organization next year when the season comes to an end. Will they figure it out? Now, the things they've been saying about Shedeur Sanders, they would be saying those things anyway. They're not going to say anything poor about a prospect at this point in time. So I'm not expecting them to say anything bad because that would be ridiculous. However, the things they've been saying, not just at the Shrine Bowl or whatever it might be, the things they've been saying for months, the actions. It's not about the words, it's about the actions of the Giants. Joe Schoen has been in practices. He's been at games. Brandon Brown, same thing, practices, games, scouts, games, practices, talking to the Deion Sanders consistently. There have been more examples than I can count of the Giants being seriously interested in Shedeur Sanders, right? This is more so than we've heard anything about Cam Ward. Now, Anthony, I think that's something I want to get out of the way. And this is not a hit on Sanders by any means. I'm just pinpointing the fact that the Giants have been very openly interested in Sanders, more so than any other quarterback this offseason. That is, I think, is a fact. I think they are interested in Cam. They've been to the practices and stuff. It just hasn't gotten the attention of the media. And that is a big thing for me. That is a big influence. So I do think that is interesting. But why would the Giants show their hand in this instance when they have the third overall pick? Why would they kind of exercise this level of media attention and be okay with it? I don't know. I don't really get the strategy right now. Maybe you have some other insights into why the Giants may be broadcasting their interest in Sanders, despite the fact they might not even be able to draft him. There is a possibility that he is not there to take. Bucky Brooks has the freaking Titans taking him first overall. So there is a possibility he's not there. Why are we broadcasting to the world that we like him so much?
All right, so I want to counterpoint because this is actually something that I saw somebody bring up in the comment sections of our episode recently, and I had thought of it but hadn't brought it up before. The Giants apparently did more research than anybody, and more research on J.J. McCarthy than they did of any prospect in last year's draft class. They still didn't draft him number 6 overall. So I think that's important to use as a reminder. Yes, the Giants' interest in Shedeur Sanders is legitimate, I would think. It's been publicly reported all over the place and at a very high volume as well. Seems like they've done more research on him than any of the other quarterbacks. That's how it's being reported. Seems like they like him more than any of the other quarterbacks. That's how it's being reported. That's how it was reported last year for J.J. McCarthy as well, and they still passed over him with the number 6 overall pick. So I think that's important to note. A lot of this is fabricated news from the reporters. I mean, that's just truly what it is. And it's not to say that they're in bad faith doing it. They're reporting what they know based on knowledge and belief, and that's their job to do that. And they're doing a good job of their jobs. But they did a good job with their jobs last offseason as well, and led a lot of Giants fans to believe that if J.J. McCarthy was on the board at number 6 overall, he would be the Giants' next franchise quarterback. The reporters got that wrong, therefore the fans got that wrong as well. So right now the reports and everything are indicating if Shedeur Sanders is on the board at number 3 overall, the New York Giants will take him number 3 overall. But that's exactly the same narrative and story that we have from McCarthy last year. There really is no guarantee that that's how the New York Giants feel. Despite how many practices they've been to, how many games Joe Schoen has personally attended, how many praiseworthy comments he's made about Sanders and about Dion as well, Shedeur and Dion, he's praised both of them. All of these things are true. They've all happened. Still doesn't guarantee that the Giants are going to take him at number 3 overall if he's there for the taking. They might not view him as a first-round prospect. They might view him as a second-round prospect, and so might the rest of the league. And if that's the case, and the Giants sign a quarterback in free agency that they feel can start at least 2 seasons for them, they might very well pass up on Shedeur Sanders and decide we'll take him in round 2 if he's there, or a different quarterback, or we will just go ahead, try and win this year with our bridge, and take a quarterback in 2026. And that's what ties into the other half of this conversation, Alex. Everything is on the table. That's what Joe Schoen said, and that, I believe, is true. I don't think anything gets taken off the table until free agency. After free agency, that will change the New York Giants draft plans. If they land a superstar wide receiver in free agency, you could take wide receiver probably off their draft board in round 1 and round 2 of the draft. That's usually how it goes for NFL teams. If they end up signing Sam Darnold to a 3-year deal worth $35 million per season somehow, you could probably say they won't take Shedeur Sanders at number 3 overall if he's there. So, again, everything is on the table. I believe Joe Schoen when he says that. I also do believe that the Giants are heavily interested in drafting Shedeur Sanders, but I also think they're doing due diligence. They're doing so much research on Sanders because they want to know before they get to April, if we make this draft selection, if we take Sanders, where are we going to need to focus in on to make him better? Where do we feel comfortable with him? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the pros and the cons as well? Not just pros and cons in his game, but the pros to drafting Sanders. Okay, we have long-term flexibility. The cons, okay, well, we might have to change our scheme for this reason or that reason. That's what all of this is. It's a process. We always call it a pre-draft process, and now we're watching a process unfold. So I get what you're saying, Alex, and I understand the sentiment behind how much the Giants have invested into researching Sanders and how much that's been reported, but I just think it's important to remember same thing happened last year with McCarthy and some of these other quarterbacks. There were even reports at one time, Alex, the Giants were head over heels for Michael Penix at one point. Every year, we just hear crazy rumors about everything. So I think it's always important to take it with a grain of salt, see the information that's being provided, try to get to the second layer of that, and then understand the logic behind the information.
Sure. And my counter to that would be J.J. McCarthy is really hyped for the Giants, started about a month before the draft. You know, like we saw all of the combine and we saw them going to meet with him and we heard the stories from the reporters. My counter would be we're hearing it directly from the Giants now. You know what I mean? Like we're not even hearing it from reporters. We're seeing Brandon Brown anonymously tell ESPN stuff. We're
Sure. Well,
seeing, you know
we
what I mean?
assume that was Brandon Brown, but I also do remember last year sending in graphic requests to Danny about how the Giants were making nice comments about McCarthy and about some of these other
Absolutely.
guys. So
Absolutely. But I will say, like, we saw the hard knocks, how they wanted Jaden Daniels. We saw the behind the scenes. Obviously there was more quarterbacks to consider. And this year it's weird because like we know Sanders in last year's draft would be like 20 plus. He wouldn't even be in the top 20 picks in last year's draft class. This year, they're going to have to make that decision at 3, and it's going to be a force. It's going to be a force just by nature because it's the quarterback position. But it's a decision that they have to make, obviously, by most accounts. And I think that this attention, and I'd like to rewind to a couple episodes ago when I pointed out a lot of this attention from Sanders has been from Sanders. It's been from his videographers. It's been from the Colorado team. It's been from Dion. It's been from the cleats. Like, a lot of this media narrative is driven by the Sanders team. And that, to me, is interesting by nature because the Giants don't seem to be off-put by it by any means. It could be a smokescreen, guys. Like, I have no freaking clue. This has nothing to do with Sanders as a football player. Just the media attention that he's been getting in the Giants' interest. Like, the direct quotes that he dropped yesterday, Joe Schoen at the Senior Bowl, or rather whatever it was, said he's a great kid, really good personality, football smart. It was good getting the meeting. He's had a really good career in Colorado, and obviously look forward to getting to know all these guys the rest of the process. We saw the DAP between Brian Dable and Sanders. That thing was crispy clean. So I'll say this.
It was between Dable and McCarthy too, though.
Sure. What I will say, though, is that the attention that the Sander team has been generating about the Giants from their side of things is super interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a prospect do something like this before. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I've ever seen a prospect have a team centered around driving media attention to go to a team or to generate interest for a team that needs a quarterback. It's so interesting. Is it a bad thing? I don't know. I don't really care. I'm just saying it's an element that I don't think I've ever seen before. And it's kind of interesting to think about what that can mean for the Giants.
We've never seen anything like this before, but we've never seen anything like anything before until it happens. Like, the world is constantly evolving and changing. The draft has changed so much. College football has changed so much with the implementation of NIL and the way that certain players have the spotlight shine on them. He's the son of Deion Sanders, for God's sakes. He was always going to have the spotlight shining bright on him. It just so happens that he's also really good at football, so that spotlight intensifies even further. So you can't expect these things. You can't know that this is the way this process is going to unfold, but the process is different every single year. And that's because it's a constantly evolving and changing thing. That's what the NFL is. That's especially what the NFL draft is, Alex. I mean, seriously, have you seen the viewership that the NFL draft does? It's unbelievable. Some people say that they enjoy the NFL draft more than they enjoy the Super Bowl, which is crazy. That's a legitimate take that some sports fans have. But it's because of the way that this process is so closely followed by the media and how guys like Shedeur Sanders will have cameras and videographers recording their every step. It adds more storyline and more intrigue to the NFL draft. And that's just the way that this thing is going. It's moving in a direction where the number one reality TV show in the world is basically the NFL draft, because that's what it becomes by the end of the process. It becomes a reality TV show. All these different storylines. The more you follow it, the more you know, the less you know almost. The more information you gather, the less clear the bigger picture really is. That's what the beauty of the NFL draft is, and that's why it's so exciting for people. But also, Alex, I think it's important to point out, we're kind of saying like, oh, well, we've seen Brandon Brown make these seemingly anonymous comments. We've seen Joe Schoen and Brian Dable dap up Shedeur Sanders, right? All those things. But Alex, also remember, last year, the way the Giants fans were 100% convinced that the Giants were going to draft J.J. McCarthy because they met with him on Easter Day. You remember that, right? The Easter Day meeting, how that was a major talking point. Why would they meet with J.J. McCarthy, take time out of their holiday to meet with him if they weren't serious about drafting him number 6 overall? And then what happened? We saw Hard Knocks. He wasn't even on the board for them at number 6 overall. Shocking as that might be, that was the ultimate outcome. So all of this news about them doing this due diligence and this research on Sanders, dapping him up at the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, having extra meetings with him, Malik Neighbors hanging out with him, all these things, they just remind me of last year's process with J.J. McCarthy. That's all it is. And it doesn't guarantee anything to me. It doesn't indicate how legitimate the Giants' interest is. It doesn't indicate anything other than they're doing their due diligence for me personally. And I think that's important to do that due diligence. So before I turn it back to you, because I think, I said a lot in there that you might want to respond to, I want to take a quick look over at BetUS. And just since I mentioned the Super Bowl a second ago, the NFL draft, the Super Bowl, those are two of the biggest events of the year for the NFL in general. But if we're looking at the Super Bowl, I know it's the Super Bowl that nobody listening to the show wanted to see. Absolutely nobody was excited to watch the Eagles in the NFC Conference Championship. Pretty much nobody wanted to see the Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, this is the ugly Super Bowl we have, but there is one player that we also just can't stop hearing about, Alex, and it's Saquon Barkley. And in my opinion, if I'm going to go ahead and make one bet for the Super Bowl next week, I'm betting on Saquon Barkley to score 2+ touchdowns at plus 200 on BetUS. I'm actually surprised that this line is where it is at plus 200, Alex. I honestly thought it would be closer to a minus 110 or something because he's gone for 2+ touchdowns, I think, every game of the playoffs so far and most of the games in the regular season. So I think that I would like to throw a flyer down, 2+ touchdowns for Saquon in the Super Bowl, plus 200. I'm going to make that bet, see if I win something. I think that the odds are really, really favorable for that selection. So I'm going to go ahead and place that bet on BetUS, guys. Make sure you go check out BetUS, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry, and use code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit match up to $2,000. So, Alex, I'll turn it back to you. I said a lot there about the comparisons between McCarthy, the Easter Day thing, Sanders, and also just the process of the NFL draft and how it's changed so much. Whatever you want to respond to in that big hodgepodge of topics that I brought up, please go ahead and feel free.
Yeah, I'm not going to get through all of it, but I will say that, yeah, of course, the draft it's entertainment, right? The draft is meant to be entertaining. It's meant for teams to have hope, optimism, disappointment. We've seen it all as Giants fans. We think we're going to get this guy. We end up getting that guy. So I do think that it'll be propped up full of entertainment, full of allure and craziness as it always is. And the Giants being a very, very interesting position right now and needing a quarterback. Looking at Sanders, from an objective standpoint, and this is the way I'm trying to go about Sanders now, is like I'm looking at him from a football standpoint. I don't give a shit about his dad anymore. I don't give a shit about his media attention. I don't give a shit about Colorado. I only care about what type of football player Shedeur Sanders is. The rest can absolutely bug off. So with that being the case, Anthony, just looking at an objective lens, the positives about Shedeur Sanders, and people in the comments are always like, I know you hate Sanders, Alex, and it's not true. It's not true. You just are not listening. If you've got to this point in the episode and you still think I hate Shedeur Sanders, listen carefully. Open your ears up. Listen carefully. Shedeur Sanders has the best footwork, the best technique, the best fundamentals at quarterback in this draft class, and it's not remotely close, in my opinion. His footwork is fantastic. From an actual quarterbacking standpoint, he has all of the fundamentals down, right? There are some red flags. He drifts out of the pocket. His arm talent's good. It's not great. He sometimes, he's not the best athlete, right? He can move, but he can't. He's kind of more of a statue than a runner. Cam Ward, in my opinion, is a much better runner. He's better in the pocket. Dude, I know you're making faces, but Shedeur Sanders is not a running quarterback. He is better in the pocket than he is on the move.
Yeah, that doesn't mean, but he's strip the word statue.
Okay, statue. Okay, sure. He's not a mobile quarterback though. I don't label him as a mobile quarterback.
What's the definition of mobile? Because I mean,
he is a average to slightly below average running quarterback. If you want to say running quarterback,
running, sure, yes, but I think he's got mobility within and outside of the pocket,
and that's fine.
Plays.
And that's fine. And that's okay. But he's not. He doesn't have even close to what Daniel. No, I'm not just using Daniel Jones as an example. He doesn't have the Daniel Jones mobility. He doesn't have Josh Allen mobility. He doesn't even have Patrick Mahomes mobility, in my opinion.
Well,
I don't think so. I think Cam Ward has Patrick Mahomes a little bit closer to Patrick Mahomes' mobility in terms of his ability to take off running. Sanders can do it, but he's not going to beat you with his legs for the most part. He's not a savvy runner like that. He can punch him in from 2 yards. What?
Neither will Cam Ward. Cam Ward doesn't beat
way more than Sanders, though.
Dude, overselling it. He's not the runner that you're making him seem. He's
not a runner, but he's more mobile and athletic than Sanders by a sizable margin, in my opinion.
I don't think it's that sizable. I think it's pretty relatively close. I
disagree.
Neither one of them are run first quarterbacks at all. Neither one.
No, and I'm not labeling them as such.
I think you could argue Jackson Dart is the better athlete of all three of those guys. He's the best runner of those three guys.
And I think that you could argue that as well. But I think that Cam Ward is closer to Jackson Dart than Sanders is to Cam Ward in mobility.
I don't know. I know that the stats indicate that he had negative rushing yards last year. When you look at College Football Reference for Sanders, they take into account sack yardage. He got sacked a bunch. That's why he has negative rushing yards on his total. He actually picked up, I think, around 500 yards with his legs last year.
Yeah, but like that's also because he has so many receivers running. There's just space for him to run. Like that's not going to be the case in the NFL. And I watched him barely by slim margins escape sacks at times. Those will be sacks in the NFL. Like I
Same
do
thing
think
for Cam
that
Ward.
it will be.
Last year, we saw Caleb Williams was the Houdini at breaking out of sacks in the pocket, and he still is. He still does it, but he still takes a lot of sacks because
Absolutely.
It's different going college.
But Cam Ward's superpower is not his ability to escape sacks. It's his ability to maneuver inside the pocket. Sanders likes to bail out. He likes to bail out, and that's just a part of what his film shows. He does not like to stay in the pocket all the times. He can do it, and I think with a better offensive line, he will get better in that regard. And that's one of the red flags I think will be addressed in the NFL, and why the Giants, we're talking about Sanders, needs to improve their offensive line if they go in this direction, because he's extraordinarily accurate in the pocket. They need to stop that fading in the back in the backfield for Sanders. That will be a big point of emphasis, I think, for Dable in this offensive scheme if they draft him.
Okay, so just to clarify on the stats and what the stats show, rushing-wise, Shedeur Sanders had 305 rushing yards in 2024. Cam Ward had 336. That's only 32 yards difference.
The stats are not what I'm talking about, though.
I understand what you're talking about, but I don't see this major discrepancy. I think that Cam Ward has mobility, sure. It's not like Caleb Williams' mobility. It's not like even close to Josh Allen. It's more like Ben Roethlisberger mobility.
No.
That's what it is. It's more Dak
Prescott
is the argument that I always make. He's very similar to Dak Prescott, but Dak Prescott was objectively a better athlete coming out of college than Cam Ward was. If you argue with that, you don't know. You have to go watch him at Oklahoma. He is more in the Dak Prescott vein than he is in the Josh Allen vein, and that I don't even think is debatable. And I don't think that Shedeur Sanders is that far off from being in that vein either. Shedeur has really great ability to navigate behind the line of scrimmage. I get what you're saying. He's not going to rip off big runs. He's not an elite weapon. He's not going to make people miss. He's not going to juke people. I don't think Cam Ward does those things that well either. Cam Ward is just a really good at his feel for the pocket and ability to escape, and that's where his athleticism comes into play.
Sure, but I also think that he is quite sizably, he's a bit heavier than Sanders and a little bit better. I'd say not a little bit, but he's a decent amount better of an athlete compared to Shedeur, and he's going to be better in the NFL because of that size difference and in terms of mobility. But that doesn't mean Sanders doesn't have his own strengths compared to Cam Ward. Like I said earlier, Sanders' strengths are his fundamentals. Like, he is unbelievably accurate, fantastic footwork, and he commits to his fundamentals. Like, he doesn't abandon his arm talent, or his technique under pressure, right? Cam Ward abandons all fundamentals when he gets under pressure at times. He sails passes. He changes his arm slot. I don't like that stuff. I think he needs to be more consistent, like more controlled chaos. Sanders, under duress, maintains his fundamentals a lot of times in his footwork, and I love that about him in terms of why he would be a good fit in the NFL for the Giants, because he's going to be consistent in that regard.
I'm going to make one more point, though, on the comparison between their athleticism, because I think this is an interesting one, and it's also an advanced stat that I think the fans will want to hear. So if we're talking about the types of runs for both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, okay, follow with me on this logic. If the team calls more designed run plays for one of those quarterbacks, that means that team believes that quarterback would be the better runner of the football, right?
Okay.
Of the yardage that Cam Ward picked up with his legs last year, the 336 rushing yards, 325 of those yards were off of the scramble, meaning that the majority of the time that he ran, it wasn't a designed run because his team didn't feel like he was a good runner. It was because the play broke down and he had to pick up yards. For Shedeur Sanders, of the 305 yards that he picked up on the ground, 284 of them came off the scramble. So there were actually more designed rushing yards picked up by Sanders, the team calling plays to implement his legs into the game plan, than there were for Cam Ward. So
I think that's so situational, though. If you're shredding them apart through the passing game, and they're like, all right, we have to drop more guys into the secondary, and they stop blitzing, you're going to use more designed runs for your quarterback naturally. But I think that is very situational. I also don't think in the NFL Sanders has the frame to be a runner. He's going to get murdered with his frame, in my opinion. Yeah, but Jaden Daniels is completely different. He's a fast guy.
That's not what you just said, though. You just mentioned his frame. If you're talking
Yeah,
about the
and
frame,
look at Jaden Daniels get tossed around like a rag doll, dude. That's exactly
he didn't
why
get
would you
hurt
want
this year.
Yes, he did. He
Missed
broke
one
a rib.
game. That's it.
Okay, he played through pain. Yeah, but he got hurt multiple times running the football.
But
He just played through it.
I'm talking about the agility and the fat. You can't compare the athleticism of Daniels to pretty much any quarterback. But if you're comparing the frame,
Sure.
I'm not using the frame against Shedeur Sanders when we just saw a rookie quarterback go to the
But he
conference
can't even
championship game
evade
with an even
tacklers.
worse frame.
Dude, a linebacker like Fred Warner is going to, and you see Shedeur Sanders take off, and he's going to get killed. Murdered. He can't
Okay,
out
but if you're
athleticism.
arguing
He
about
can't
how
outrun
great
any of these
of a
guys.
processor he is and how his fundamentals are great, he's going to slide. You trust him to slide.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though. Like, I'm not expecting him to be a mobile quarterback in the NFL because he's not an athlete like that. He's not an athlete.
I'm not
like
saying he's some supreme athlete. He's not as bad as you're making him seem. Is all that I'm trying to
that.
argue.
I'm not
He's
saying.
a
What
better
I'm trying to
athlete.
say. I'm not trying to make him seem bad. I'm just comparing him to Cam Ward.
And the comparison, they are very close as athletes.
But I think that if you have Cam Ward, who's a decent chunk better of an athlete and weighs more and has a bigger frame, that is going to bode better for him in the NFL, naturally. In my opinion.
Sure, yes, having more weight and more muscle mass usually equates to being healthier in the NFL. Sometimes. I mean, Will Levis is built like a fucking bodybuilder and he gets hurt all the time, so not necessarily.
He's an idiot.
Actually, sometimes having fat on your body helps you absorb contact. So
Cam's got a little belly. I love it.
He does, and that's why Patrick Mahomes has that dad bod. I don't know if you've ever. That's actually getting off topic now. Mahomes has actually spoken. You know, when you saw that big beer belly picture of him in the locker room, and he said afterwards, he responded to it. He said, "Well, me and my trainer have worked on that because it makes it more. I can absorb contact better." So
it's kind of funny, actually.
It is. It's actually very interesting, the sports science of this whole thing. And now we're getting off into tangents and random topics. But, okay, my point is I'm bringing up a bunch of statistics. I'm bringing up my opinion from watching the film. All of the evidence that I am presenting to the table indicates that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are very similar as athletes. And then you are pretty much just countering and saying, no. And I don't know where the no is coming from.
But I'm not looking at stats. I'm
looking at stats and film. I'm bringing both. We watched the same games of both of these players together.
But I watched the mobility of Cam when he scrambled out of the pocket, the ability to navigate tacklers, and the ability to get downfield.
That's
and
pocket presence, though. That's because he's got an innate ability with the eyes in the back of his head to evade these defenders. That is more, to me, understanding of situation and spatial awareness. That's what makes Cam Ward so special. But if they line up on a 40-yard dash and they race, I bet you they have very similar times.
But it's not always about, just straight line speed. It's about agility and being able to stop and start and go in different directions. There's so many elements to being a good athlete.
Cam Ward is not a stop-start runner.
Obviously, but I'm not talking about him as Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm talking about him compared to Shedeur Sanders.
If we're talking about their athleticism and their similarity in their athleticism, they are very close. If you believe that they would have similar...
I think that Cam Ward is better and bigger, which makes him substantially better, in my opinion, in the NFL.
It's just not substantial. I don't think it's substantial.
If you are bigger and a better athlete than a guy that's smaller and is not going to be able to support that same play style in the NFL, there's going to be a massive difference between those two guys.
You know that Lamar Jackson lost 15 pounds prior to the season?
Dude, Lamar Jackson is like a freaking unicorn, though. We can't use him as an example.
That's not my point, though. Don't take that and then run with the extreme of it. I'm saying you're talking about weight. I'm not talking about Lamar Jackson's running ability. I'm talking about weight. Lamar Jackson lost weight and had his healthiest season this year. So this comparison of,
because he had Derrick Henry.
Because Cam Ward is fatter, he's going to stay healthier. That's not necessarily true.
Saying that. I'm saying that he is going to be able to absorb contact and be more willing to be a little bit more mobile in the NFL. I don't think Sanders' profile is going to be good in the NFL in terms of him moving. Like, he even just escaping from the pocket, he's slow.
But he had more designed quarterback runs, though.
Dude, if he has worse pocket presence than Cam Ward and he's a worse athlete, he is going to be caught in the backfield as well.
He's not a worse athlete, though, is what I'm trying to say. That's the difference. You're just saying he's smaller. Yes, he is smaller. He and Cam Ward have very similar athletic profiles.
Okay, well, we're going to find out in next year anyway. But I think that Cam Ward is a better runner than Shedeur Sanders is, just based on what I've seen, too. So, we'll have to see what happens at the Combine, because obviously we'll get a lot more measurables from that.
I'm not saying he's not better. He's better, but acting like there's this wide gap between them as runners, there isn't. They're very similar.
I think it's a nice chunk different. I don't think it's significant, but I think it's enough to make a difference in the NFL.
We're talking in circles now. We're not going to. We're going to agree to disagree on this one.
Regardless, Sanders has much better fundamentals as a passer than Cam Ward, in my opinion. I think that they're totally different players in general. Like, I think they're totally different in a lot of ways. I don't think they're similar. In their play styles are different. Their arm slots are different. Their risk taking is different. Their fundamentals are different. Their athleticism, in my opinion, is different. Maybe not as much as you think, but it is different in my opinion. Their pocket presence is different. Their red flags are different. Everything about them is different in terms of their play styles, in my opinion. And I think that Sanders is a very, very good floor prospect. He is a very good floor and you agree with this, though. Like, Sanders has the higher floor, but Cam Ward has the higher ceiling. No?
I think so.
Right. So that's what I think. And I think that for the Giants, and they talk about consistency, the two words they've used, consistency and accuracy. Both of those things Sanders brings on day one.
The Giants' mantra is smart, tough, dependable. Dependable would apply more closely to Shedeur Sanders, would it not?
Yeah, it would. That's consistency. It's just a synonym.
Yes, but I'm saying the Giants' mantra is smart, tough, dependable. Like, that's what they... And if you're talking about dependability, wouldn't that lean into Sanders more than it would Cam Ward?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I was about to get to. Is that I think the Giants want consistency and accuracy, and that's why I'm about to steer this in the direction of that's why Sanders.
I wasn't sure where you were going.
Yeah. So that's why I think Sanders has been such a talking point for them, has been such a focal point, not because they're smoke screening it, but because I think they know he'll be there at 3. And I think that they like his accuracy, they like his consistency, dependability in that, and he's a tough dude. Nobody can argue that. Sanders is tough as nails. I've watched him take massive hits standing there, knowing he's going to get absolutely rocked, but knowing he's got to get the ball out and get it downfield. I've seen it. Saw it live.
So,
he's a tough son of a gun.
The 3 pillars that the New York Giants base their analysis of players on: smart, tough, dependable. That's the mantra.
Yep.
I would say that from a reading the field standpoint, smart goes to Sanders.
Yep.
Okay. I would say that tough is about a wash. They're both, I would say, equally as tough. Dependable, I think, also goes to Sanders. And I think that's actually, we just boiled it down. That's why the New York Giants lean Sanders over Ward.
And we've been talking about this for months. This is exactly why we think the Giants are going to take Sanders.
But I think we finally just figured out exactly what it boils down to. And I think that was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, everything that they've said, their mantras, their words they've used, specific verbiage, aligns exactly with what Sanders brings. And that's what he's going to do. He is going to give them a good floor on day one to work with. They're going to be able to sell that to Mara, right? But in terms of upside and future potential, Cam Ward is the best option. If they want to go for the future, if they want to build around if this was year one of the rebuild, Cam Ward would be their pick. But it's not. And they need someone who's going to step in and be able to operate an NFL offense on day one and have a high floor on day one, and that is Sanders. That's how I feel about it, and that's why I think they're going to go with Sanders. I don't even think they're going to have a chance to get Cam Ward personally. I think he's going to be gone. So I think Sanders, they've sold themselves on the idea that Sanders, I mean, look, it's possible that Cam does fall to 3, but I do think that it's interesting. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting one.
Yes, so, I'm very interested. I'm very interested in this comparison about Sanders and Cam Ward's athleticism, and I can't wait to see the comment sections for that section of this episode. That portion of this episode, that was good. That was fun back and forth.
That was fun.
I'm very excited to see who gets the short end of the stick in the comment section.
It will be fun to look. And by no means was this supposed to be me hating on Sanders. I'm just comparing differences between the two quarterbacks. And roundabout is that Sanders does profile better for the Giants and what their needs and what they've been saying. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the fact. But Brian Daboll also, if you want to talk about comparisons to Josh Allen, Cam Ward is the closest to Josh Allen, in my opinion, in terms of riskiness and randomness and his play style. Daboll may love that about him. You know what I mean? And I'm sure he does.
He may, but I think that I've had a shift, okay? And I've kind of tried to make this clear on the podcast. Everybody always says Daboll, Josh Allen. They think of Daboll, they think of Josh Allen. They say, oh, the Giants want to throw the ball downfield. The Giants want to be a gunslinging passing attack. No, they don't. At no point over the last 3 years has Brian Dable called a game plan that has been downfield centric. He runs
Mm-hmm.
a West Coast spread offense. It's a combination of two schemes. It creates a lot of quick, short passing attempts that are high probability completions, and it mixes in a spread in the offense, widening the formations, and at times creating vertical passing attacks. By no means is this an air raid offense. Is this a run and shoot offense where they're prioritizing the deep ball? It never has been. So everybody looks to these Josh Allen-esque quarterbacks and says, perfect scheme fit with Brian Dable. Brian Dable's scheme right now, and what we've seen over the last 3 years, Josh Allen is not a scheme fit for his scheme. That is the truth of it. Everybody says Brian Dable's scheme is whatever the Buffalo Bills do because that's Josh Allen. Josh Allen transcends the scheme. Josh Allen ignores the play calls and does things on his own because he is a superstar. He works outside of the confines of the scheme. So you can't keep looking, not you, Alex, but fans can't keep looking at Drew Aller. Oh, he's similar to Josh Allen. That's got to be the guy that the New York Giants want and love. No, they want a guy who efficiently runs the West Coast quick passing offense that Brian Dable has been calling for 3 years. Why have they not had success with that? Because Daniel Jones is not a quick processor of the field. He was not able to quickly identify Wan'Dale Robinson is open within the first second of this play. Let me throw it before he turns around. It was, oh, Wan'Dale Robinson turned around. Now he's open. Now I throw it. Now he's tackled. That's the problem that the Giants were facing in their offense over the last 3 years. Going forward, they want a quarterback who reads the defense pre-snap and makes the throw post-snap to get the ball out quickly. That is Shedeur Sanders. So the comparisons between Josh Allen and Cam Ward are moot comparisons to me. They don't matter. They do not even factor into the equation when I'm talking about Brian Dable's preferences at quarterback, because Brian Dable's preferences at quarterback in Buffalo were different than what they are now in New York. Now he prefers a quarterback who runs a West Coast style offense. And I think that is a very clear distinction for Giants fans to understand and to start to factor into these conversations. He isn't looking for the off-script, gunslinging, turnover-prone quarterback. For the last 3 years, the only thing Brian Dable has prioritized was keeping the football clean, out of harm's way, and getting the ball out quick. That's what the New York Giants want. That is Shedeur Sanders rather than Cam Ward. And again, I just think it's important when we keep looking at these quarterbacks every single year, we stop with the comparisons to Josh Allen, because Brian Dable has not built a scheme in New York that Josh Allen would be maximized in. He has built a scheme that a player who runs a West Coast offense would be maximized in, because that's what the Giants run right now.
And they need a guy that's going to get the ball out really fast. Like, you watch Mahomes, and obviously he is the pinnacle. He's the peak West Coast offense quarterback. He is the guy you want. He is the freaking example. You watch him play, and you see how fast, when he makes a decision, that ball is out like lightning. There are two things I will say. I think that the decisiveness for Cam Ward, his ability to get the ball out fast, is better than Sanders, but Sanders is far more accurate when he does make that throw. I think the decision making, Cam Ward has the speed to get it out fast, but he can float balls. Sometimes he abandons his fundamentals when he sees the throw. Sometimes he's so quick to go past his progressions, he misses guys that are open. Sanders, when he sees a guy that's open, he nails him. Sometimes it's a tad bit slower, but he's accurate and he nails his guy. So that's kind of where I lean. Like, if they can speed up the game, which is why I love the VR thing, by the way, for a guy like Sanders, if he could use that VR to slow the game speed down for him at the NFL level and get the ball out decisively and quick and accurately, dude's going to be a monster in this offense, right? He can operate this offense at a very high level. My concerns are that when it comes down to being in the fourth quarter, when it comes down to needing a big comeback, when it comes down to being able to move and be able to do stuff off script, is he going to have the upside to do those things? That's where Cam Ward gets the plus for me, because I think that his ability off script, those hero moments under control, are wins and losses, especially in the playoffs. I don't know if Sanders goes up against Josh Allen, goes up against some of these elite quarterbacks in big moments, and he can do those freak things that just drop your jaw. I don't know. We haven't seen it because he goes up against horrible competition and he flopped against the once bold team that he played against. And I'm not saying that's going to be his indication of what he's like at the NFL at all, because obviously a lot needs to happen before we see that. But I think that the upside of what Cam, his style is why he's labeled QB1. But Sanders is why his floor is so high, because he can keep you in the game, but is he going to win you the game? That's the question I have.
But, and I understand what you're saying, college versus pros, talent level is different. Sanders' iconic moment in his college career is a 98-yard touchdown drive in the fourth quarter to tie the game in a rivalry game versus Colorado State. And after the game, he said, all I was thinking was Tom Brady time. He has literally done exactly what you're asking him to do and I get it.
Against Colorado State.
I get it. It's against Colorado State. But also keep in mind, that is a very intense environment, more similar to an NFL game because it is a rivalry game. And those in college, they're played with more intensity. The atmosphere is more intense in terms of the crowd. That was basically, you could say, the most NFL-esque situation he had been in at any point, and he put together a 98-yard game-tying drive to send it into overtime. So can he do those things? I believe that he can in the right situation with the right scheme, right players around him. Obviously, those are all the things that we say are contingent for Sanders, but we've seen him do it, and I think that had to be brought up in this conversation. If we're talking about fourth quarter, do-or-die moments and all that stuff, we've seen him do it.
Yeah, and I'll say this. Cam Ward was the best fourth quarter quarterback in college football this past season. And by most accounts, like, he was a freaking monster in crunch time. So I do think from a clutch factor and a hero factor, Cam's got the benefit there, but he can also lose you a game with his decision making, right? Like, so there is that red flag, and that's why I've always preached when it comes to Cam Ward, he needs to find a balance between being a hero and being a quarterback, because like there are differences to those two things. It's a fascinating conversation. And if you're an NFL team, you have to weigh that. Are you looking for the guy that's going to win you a game? But he may also set you back in the first half because of the way he plays. So Sanders isn't going to set you back in the first half, but he may now also win you the game in the second half. So like that's where I see the difference between those two players. Like, they're just so, and that's what I was saying before. These two guys are so different in so many ways. Their play styles, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Obviously, Anthony, you're more than welcome to disagree with that, and I think you do in some ways. In some ways, their play styles are absolutely different. Their mentalities are different. Their everything about them, not everything, but a large chunk. You're getting two different prospects here. If you have to weigh them, you really have to say to yourself as a team, do you want the guy that's going to come in and give you consistency now? Or do you want the guy that's probably going to struggle with his decision-making, but if he gets it all, puts it all together, could be elite?
I want the best football player, and I don't care how you slice it. If you're looking at ceiling floors, I don't give a fuck. I just want the best football player in here to play quarterback for the New York Giants, and that's how the New York Giants need to look at this. Who is the better player? Take him.
Cam Ward is the better player.
I agree with you. I think Cam Ward is the better pound-for-pound football player.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that the allure of the name Sanders plays into this a bit at times, because if Sanders wasn't his last name, the media attention would not be the same. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't be, naturally. And I don't think that's a crazy take. I don't really think that's a crazy take.
But careful now. I don't want you to get attacked.
I'm not saying it would make a humongous difference, but I'm saying that the media attention would be less.
I agree.
And it would be substantially
less. He is the son of Deion Sanders. He's obviously going to get attention.
And he's got a podcast. He's pushing it all out.
That applies more pressure to a person. Being the son of a Hall of Famer, being in the spotlight,
Absolutely.
and he rose to the occasion and fought through all of the pressure and still came out as one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and I think he deserves credit for that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that the way I forget who said this, called him an overachiever.
I think it was Daniel Jeremiah.
Daniel Jeremiah, and I think that's actually a great way to paint it, because I think that Shedeur Sanders overachieved. He's not the best athlete. He doesn't have the best arm. He doesn't have all these elite tangible traits, but he did it anyway. He achieved anyway, and I think that is what the NFL is about. It's about overachieving your red flags, overachieving your limitations. That's what makes Patrick Mahomes so great. No one saw him as this West Coast style quarterback. Everyone saw him as the big arm that could throw 70 yards downfield in an air raid system. That's how everyone saw him. And they took him and said, we actually don't think that's how you should be playing. We think you should be in a West Coast style. And we think that you can operate as a highly elite processing quarterback. And that's not how everyone saw him coming out of the draft. But that's what he ended up becoming. So I think that the limitations people place on you are just reasons to beat them. And I think that Sanders loves to beat those red flags. He loves to attack those question marks. Same with Cam Ward. They both have that style. They both have that mentality. They work together. They work with the same coaches. They have that mentality as a unit, which I love. So I think either or, I love their mindsets. Whoever the Giants get, love their mindsets. They both want to prove everybody wrong. One of them is a nobody, and Cam Ward, one of them doesn't have a father who's Deion Sanders. The other one has one of the best NFL players in history. And that expectation, you gotta live up to that, man. You know what I mean? Like that's the pressure. You want to be as good as your dad, if not better. So with that being said, it's a lot of pressure for a guy like Shedeur. And the thing I love about it is he's like, I don't want to go to Cleveland where I'm going to be a nobody. I want to go to New York. I want all the pressure. He says, screw the pressure, give me all of it. And I think I like that about him. I like that moxie about Shedeur Sanders. He's not afraid of it. He wants more of it. And that's something that I do think plays in New York because God knows the pressure's on here. You come to New York, you're on the line, man. Like it's do or die for you. And I think that he will soak up that pressure and he will perform with it.
You are making such a compelling argument for Shedeur Sanders, man.
But that's what we're compelling it because this is what the Giants
You're beating the hater
saying,
allegations. Bro. I'm giving you credit. You're beating the hater allegations. Nobody should be commenting in this one. Oh man, Alex, you just hate Shedeur Sanders. He's making a compelling argument for drafting Shedeur Sanders in this episode. So I'm just gonna say that and make sure the people are hearing that. That way you don't get attacked. Because I feel bad.
I will get attacked no matter what.
Too often. They gotta stop. Stop attacking Alex.
I mean, look, I'll get the attacks anyway, but it doesn't matter because they just don't listen to what I'm trying to say. They just react to one or two sentences and then say, this is what you said. I'm like, you just skipped the other parts of what I had to say.
Oh, yes, I know.
Every time.
Almost crashed out in our last live stream because somebody did that to me, so.
I know. So, this is just the way it goes, but the truth of the matter, in my opinion, at this point, Sanders, based on the way the Giants have spoken, Sanders is probably their best option. But if they want to go with upside, Cam Ward's their best option. He's going to be a little bit more of a wild card. But if they put it all together and they have good coaching, he's going to be an all-pro. That's really the situation here. So I'm really excited. I wish I could fast forward to April already, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to have more arguments like this. It's fun. But, okay, last question that I want to ask you, because you just said Cam Ward puts it all together, right situation, he can be an all-pro. Do you think that Shedeur Sanders can be an all-pro with the traits and what he's put on the field, like his ceiling, all that stuff? Does he have all-pro potential in your eyes?
Do you want to know how he would have all-pro potential? And it has nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. That's the truth. Shedeur Sanders being an all-pro has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with the coaching and the discipline of the team around him. That's how I feel. If the Giants have an undisciplined team, a porous offensive line, and receivers that do not do the right thing, don't run block, don't operate, the Giants have consistently let themselves down because of lack of discipline. If they give Sanders good routes, accurate, like positions where he can make the accurate throws, get open, I think that he has the potential to keep going. I don't trust the Giants though. You know what I mean? Like I that's kind of where I sit.
Of course, yeah,
I don't know. I don't
know
know if Sanders is going to be an all-pro, but I can see him being a Pro Bowler with the right discipline around him. I just don't know if the Giants can offer anyone that, to be quite honest.
Okay, so one point that I just thought of, it's actually not to this point. This is a different point. Cam Ward never played with a dominant WR1 in college, right? He didn't have Travis Hunter. I think that one other argument you can make, if a quarterback of between these two is going to maximize a WR1, Malik Neighbors, it would probably be Shedeur Sanders. He would feed Malik Neighbors that football because he's done that before with Travis and a bunch of other talented restrepo,
I think.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a really solid slot receiver versus a Travis Hunter. I mean, it's different.
But that's why I'm saying
you're not building game plans around Restrepo.
No, and I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Cam Ward made Restrepo look a lot better than he probably will be in the NFL.
Sure.
And I think that Travis Hunter is simply just that good. So I think
sure, yeah, but I'm saying that experience playing
both can
with
do
that
it.
level of talent. No, I'm not saying that. I didn't say Cam Ward can't do it. He probably can. I'm saying Sanders has experience doing it, maximizing a
and that's an argument
talent,
I've made.
And
yes.
I think that would be helpful for Neighbors.
Agreed.
So that's one of the reasons probably why Neighbors like Shedeur Sanders so much.
Yep.
Okay, now to the other point. I don't necessarily agree that the way that Shedeur Sanders becomes an all-pro is by the New York Giants being a good team and all the coaching and stuff. I mean, obviously, like I've said, situation matters more than anything for quarterbacks. I'm not going to retread all his points. I think what could make Shedeur Sanders an all-pro is his ability to read the field. That's what it's going to come down to. His major selling point, Alex, is his processing, his ability to run an offense that asks a lot of him, that makes him throw the ball every single play, that makes him basically be an extension of the running game by the screen passing and short passing concepts. He is asked to do everything, and he has to read defenses and process coverages in order to do all of that. That is how he becomes an all-pro, by being the smartest player on the football field every single game. That is what would make him an all-pro at the next level. And actually, I think that you can make an argument that being the smartest player on the field is more likely than Cam Ward for Shedeur Sanders. It's probably more likely than Cam Ward being the off-script gunslinger Josh Allen type that makes an all-pro team. I think you could probably bank on the intelligence and processing being more translatable than what Cam Ward does. And I think that might give Shedeur Sanders, if we're talking about ceilings, yes, I think that the ceiling is higher for Cam Ward. However, you can make an argument that Shedeur's ceiling is pretty high as well, because we've seen what mental processing does for a quarterback. The reason Jaden Daniels had such a great rookie season is not because of his athleticism and his off-script ability. It is because of everything that he did on time, in the script, and with his mental processing. A lot of that credit to the VR thing that we've discussed, but the processing is almost everything for quarterbacks. So I think that there is all-pro potential for Shedeur Sanders. Again, situation matters, but I think that the processing is a really important part of it. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't want to put any limitations on players because we could be wrong. I think that just it's the style of play, and in today's NFL, that hero style, it's not a requirement; it's a necessity. I guess those two are kind of the same thing. It's not like a desire; it's a necessity. You're not going to beat Mahomes or Josh Allen without that hero ball mentality. You're just not going to do it.
But
it's
define this hero ball, and we're really pushing the limits of the length of this episode, but define the hero ball thing, because Joe Burrow, he has the clutch factor.
His defense
too.
is ass.
He beat Mahomes. Yeah, his defense is ass, but he beat Mahomes. He's one of two quarterbacks ever to beat Mahomes in the playoffs. Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. Neither one of those guys had this off-script run around in the backfield hero ball play style.
Yeah.
They had hero ball in, read the defense, pick it apart, throw into this window, zip it into that window, make sure this guy touches the ball, and boom, we just scored a touchdown. You don't have any time to respond. I'm going to the Super Bowl and you're not. That's right. Joe Burrow, and that's Tom Brady. That's not Josh Allen. That's not Cam Ward. That's none of those guys. That's Shedeur Sanders, if anything.
Listen, I'm going to remove Tom Brady from this equation because he is... we're talking about a decision maker and a decisiveness.
I only brought him up because I said the two quarterbacks who beat Patrick Mahomes.
Totally.
Not comparing anybody to Tom Brady.
I know. That's why I'm removing him though from that two quarterbacks. I'm going to look at Joe Burrow specifically. I think that Joe Burrow, you're right. He is extremely decisive, accurate. Obviously, having Jamar Chase doesn't hurt because he can do a lot of stuff after the catch, but 90% of the time, you're gonna have to have that hero ball mentality to beat one of these guys because it's gonna come down to the last play. It's gonna come down to the last moment. Being able to do stuff off script is imperative. I think that Cam's ability off script is substantially higher.
Yes, but my point being, the off-script hero ball has not beaten Patrick Mahomes. The on-script hero ball of just having the clutch factor and reading defenses and being decisive in the fourth quarter, not folding under pressure, that's the only thing that has beaten Patrick Mahomes and made it to the Super Bowl. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
The on-script hero ball has won. The off-script hero ball has lost every single time in the playoffs, a la Josh Allen. That's the argument that I'm trying to make here.
Totally. And that's possible. That Patrick Mahomes, to beat him, you have to be the on time, but you're talking about Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. Sanders will probably never even sniff Joe Burrow's jock straps. You know what I mean? Like, he probably will never get remotely close to as good as Joe Burrow. Most likely. Probability-wise.
Yes, most likely, most quarterbacks will never come close to Joe Burrow. I'm just making the argument of playing style, not talent. So stop taking it to talent, please. I'm talking about style. And style.
But I say Joe Burrow's a nice balance, though.
Well, for sure. He can get off script. But I'm saying primarily the way that he wins in the fourth quarter, it's not by running around and making off script plays.
Timing,
it's by timing and on script. And that's what I'm trying to
do. Good offense.
Because of the ceilings of these two quarterback prospects that we're discussing, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders,
right.
The ceiling that we've seen beat Patrick Mahomes lends itself to the ceiling that Shedeur Sanders possesses more so than the Josh Allen, Cam Ward ceiling.
But that's also what plays into what I was saying.
Talking about styles is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, no, and I get that. And that's also partially what I was saying before. For Sanders to hit his ceiling, he needs the Giants to be good around him. You know what I
Agreed.
mean? Like, he needs a decent offensive line. Not that Burrow ever had one, but he needs a decent offensive line because I think that Joe Burrow's pocket mobility and pocket presence is substantially higher than Sanders is at this point in time.
One of the best.
One of the best. And he needs receivers that do a good job across the board. He has Jamar fucking Chase, apologies for the language, and T. Higgins. You know what I mean? Like, two elite receivers. We have Neighbors and nobody right now, actually, at wide receiver
They
too.
play Slay. What?
Free agent Slay, yes. So, that the way I kind of visualize it right now is like the Giants need to position Sanders to be successful, and not just successful, but like give him everything he needs to be great. That is how he'll reach the ceiling. Because I don't think he's even close to the prospect of Joe Burrow. So everything everything has to be pitch perfect around him for him. He has to be like Jared Goff, basically. Like, where everything around him is perfect.
Ew. I don't like
you
that.
know?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, Jared Goff on a team that didn't have a good offensive line and great playmakers would probably
This is why I don't like it. I know. This is why I don't like it. If that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about masking the weaknesses of a quarterback with a team, then,
But that's going to be the case. Sanders is not a great prospect. Most analysts have him in the 20th range in
a lot
in this
of prospects
class.
aren't great and they end up good players, though. Like, again, I mean,
sure.
There's been plenty who get overdrafted and are great anyway.
Right. And obviously it comes off as if I'm hating Sanders in this, and it's not. It's more so just the quality of prospects in this draft class are weak. The quarterbacks are weak in this draft class. It just is what it is. Cam and Sanders would not be top 15 picks in last year's class. That's the truth. It's the reality.
It is the truth. That is the truth.
And it's just the reality, and we have to stomach that. So either of these guys are not red flags, but they have red flags, and they are gambles. So we have to factor that in and consider that reality.
The exercise that I was trying to achieve here was if we're putting players into buckets and we're talking about on script versus off script, ceilings versus floors, I'm just trying to say what the style of play that we've seen win in the playoffs is actually more similar to the style of play that we get from Shedeur Sanders than it is from Cam Ward. That's all that I'm trying to say. Just at a brass tacks, base it down, basic level. That's where I was trying to go with it. And I think that I achieved in articulating that point. But, okay, long conversation here, a whole lot to it. The topic of the episode completely evolved into something totally different, but that's why you guys show up and you listen to our show. So this was a good episode. This was fun, but we'll find more topics to have spirited debates like this going forward, because this was a lot of fun for me. I liked this one a lot. So, guys, if you did enjoy this, we really do want to hear your thoughts on the wide array of points that we made for all of these quarterbacks and situations. There were definitely some steaming hot takes in there, so we're excited to see how you guys react to that, either lovingly or hatefully. Either or, everything is welcome. So make sure you're active in the comment sections and engage. Make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Please comment down below and, especially engage with us on this episode in particular. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Go and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants. And also, Fireside Giants, powered by BetUS. Use code YouTube150. We'll catch you on the next one. Go Giants.